If you were stuck in a town that got increasingly more supernatural, what would you do? Hi, River Vixens. Want to watch a TV show? Now, I noticed a lot of you liked the Scooby-Doo video that I just put out, so today we are talking about more teenage detective work. You're welcome! With the upcoming release of Riverdale's final season, we're going to take a look at season 1 and ask ourselves, was it ever good? There was only one way to find out, so I was very brave and I sat down and I watched the entire first season and I have some findings to report. Now, this is going to be a very long video compared to my other ones, so just sit back, relax, and let's talk about season 1 of Riverdale. Now, before we really dive into it, I'm just going to give a real quick content warning that I've written down of topics of self-harm, suicide, overdosing, student-teacher relationships, talks of abortion, gun violence, and I think that's it. Now we can get into it.
We cannot get into it. Just 1 second. Editing Kieran here to say that this show is all about a teenager's murder. Just gonna put that out there. If you can't watch it, that's okay. I'll have a more lighthearted video coming soon. Also a much shorter video coming soon, but now we can get into it.
Watching this TV show wasn't as painful as I thought it was going to be honest. Our main cast of characters include Archie and his dad Fred, Betty and her parents Alice and Hal, along with her sister Polly, Jughead and his dad FP, Veronica and her parents Hermione and Hiram, and Cheryl and her parents Penelope and Cliff. For a CW show, I was expecting the writing to be a lot worse than it actually was. Maybe that's on me for having low expectations for CW content these days, but it wasn't terrible. Maybe my recounting of the entire season will tell you that though. In the first episode, we open on Jughead giving a monologue that sets the stakes of what this season is about. There was a teenager that died and people are trying to figure out who done it. We get this narration from Jughead, who is telling us about how there's a lot of unrest in Riverdale now because everyone lost this teenager that was apparently really influential in the town. We then move to Betty, who is the girl next door getting ready for her dinner date with Archie, the popular boy next door. Something I asked myself in this scene is, why is Archie putting on his shirt right in front of his bedroom window? I would love to know why. Is he trying to show off for us? Maybe I want to look like that too. At Pops, we learn that we are going to be taking a look at another classic case of sport guy wants to do music, but he doesn't know how to. We've also established that in this conversation, they are entering their sophomore year of high school. They are about 15 to 16 in this show. I just want to put that number in your head. They are 15 to 16. Veronica comes in out of nowhere and absolutely obliterates Betty's moment with Archie, and Archie has found lust with Veronica. Anyway, the night ends and we are back to school. Archie tries to get help from Josie and the Pussycats, but Josie is not having any of it. During Veronica's first day at Riverdale High tour, Betty and Veronica run into Kevin, who gives a real quick rundown on what the social scene is like in Riverdale, which is not much. He also refers to Betty and Archie as Endgame, which is very hip and cool, and he manages to upset Veronica within moments of meeting her, so all in all, a very productive conversation. We are then thrust immediately into the trenches of Archie and Grundy's weird relationship is too strong of a word, so I'm gonna call it a situationship, because this whole thing is it's a situation. Grundy is trying to completely cut ties and disassociate herself from Archie, but since he's a teenager and is very confused, he pursues her. Of course he does. Archie shows Grundy some of the music that he's been working on in hopes that he will finally get some musical guidance, and she pretty much says, "These are fine, but I don't want to be in the same room with you, so sucks." We leave that situation and then we're on our way to cheer tryouts, and I have never been a cheerleader. I don't know if I give off that vibe, but I haven't, I swear, guys. And we see Veronica and Betty give a cheer routine that I'm assuming is all right. I'm not qualified to say otherwise. Cheryl says, they're not that great. There's no fire, pizzazz. And so Veronica decides, oh, I gotta kiss Betty to make it exciting. Excuse me? Cheryl says, still, that's not enough. And so she tries to get Betty to eviscerate her, to snap at her. But Betty, being the nice girl, she contains herself and holds it in, close to her heart. Veronica, though, stands up to the evil Cheryl Blossom and absolutely thwarts her and says that if she wants Veronica on the team, she's getting Betty too. Archie gets offered a spot on the varsity team after Jason's death and is given Jason's number, which I feel like typically does not happen. Like, I feel like that number would get retired for a little bit before being reintroduced into circulation instead of just, oh, there's this guy who looks almost exactly like that kid that just died. Let's let him have the jersey. That makes sense. He tries to turn down the offer, citing that he has to work at his dad's construction company. But earlier, he told his dad that he can't work at the construction company because of football. So which is it? What's your lie, Archie? After being officially minted River Vixens, Veronica makes Betty ask Archie out to the back-to-school dance. But Betty ends up getting too nervous, and so she asks on both her and Veronica's behalf if Archie would go to the dance with them. So that's sweet, I guess. Fred confronts Archie that he's lying to both him and his coach, so he wants to know what's the real reason that's stopping Archie from doing either construction or football. Archie tells his dad about his music, and his dad is like, oh, but you'll get into school with football. And Archie responds with a classic, that's not my dream, Dad, monologue, and he storms off. It's dance time, which means a lot of shenanigans ensue. Archie confronts Grundy and tells her that she needs to give him music lessons in order for him to stay quiet about hearing the gunshot on July 4th. That's a big brain move, Mr. Archie. Josie and the Pussycats then play the song that Cheryl and Jason were conceived to for the entire school to dance to, and that's pretty epic. Betty tries to romance Archie and asks if he sees a future with her that involves romance. However, he's so caught up in what's happening between him and Miss Grundy that he doesn't really give her an answer, and she gets very upset. Cheryl spots this from across the dance and realizes, hey, let's make some more mess by inviting them to a party at my house. Let's see what happens. At Cheryl's house, they decide to play a game of 7 Minutes in Heaven where Archie and Veronica go in the closet together to canoodle. However, not much really happens in this scene. Archie starts off asking 20 questions and finding out more about Veronica, and Veronica finds out if Archie likes Betty or like what that situation is, and they make out. Just a little bit, but once their 7 minutes is up, they come out to see Betty has run away, so they go and try and find her. Jughead spots Archie after the party and says, hey, maybe you should just talk to Betty instead of trying to guess what she's thinking. He does, and he tells Betty essentially that he doesn't think he's good enough for her, which devastates her, and she just turns around and goes back inside of her house. At some point during the dance and the chaos of this evening, Moose and Kevin snuck away to go canoodle by Sweetwater River when they discovered Jason's dead body in the river with a bullet hole in his head. Uh-oh. And that's the end of the episode. Episode 2 starts with Archie wrestling with the guilt, knowing that he heard a gunshot the day that Jason went missing on July 4th, and then Miss Grundy heard it too, but he doesn't know who to go to ask if he should go to the police. He tries Betty, and Betty blows him off because, well, scroll back 20 seconds and you'll find out. And Miss Grundy says that he can't go to the police because that'll out them as a couple. Maybe they should be outed as a couple so someone can stop it. Something that I didn't talk about in the first episode is Alice, Betty's mom, is kind of insane. She's trying to profit off of Jason's death, and I understand that she has really big beef with the Blossom family. However, a teenager's dead, maybe leave it. She also has insane control issues and tells Betty that she can't hang out with Veronica or Cheryl or Archie because they are just awful, awful people. These teenagers are just horrible people. And Betty immediately ignores her mom and goes to walk to school with Archie. Something she's trying to do is repress the heartache she feels that Archie doesn't want to kiss her, but I have a feeling that's not going to end well. Veronica tries to buy back Betty's love, and it works. I mean, to be honest, if someone offered me a bunch of sweet treats, flowers, and a self-care day, I would take it too. We then hear over the school intercom that the sheriff is officially starting to make the case of Jason's death a homicide, so everyone's a suspect now. Through a lightning round of scenes, we learn the following. Archie and Jughead were supposed to go on a road trip on July 4th, but Archie suspiciously bailed at the last minute. Cheryl has a mini breakdown about her brother's autopsy and stabs a frog in biology class. And Archie demos a new song for his friends, which gives Betty a flashback to the dance, and she runs off crying. But before Archie can console her, he's being pulled aside to be asked questions about July 4th and his knowledge on Jason's death. After this, Archie immediately runs to Grundy and says, hey, I think they're on to us. He admits to her that he's lying to protect their relationship, and he wants to know how she feels about him. I understand why a teenager would admit this. However, uh-oh, she's gonna say whatever she wants then to keep you quiet. Let's think about this, Archie. She says she loves him, blah, 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 and then we're in cheer practice. At cheer practice, Veronica tries to apologize to Betty for kissing Archie in the closet by saying if Cheryl went in, it would have been a lot worse, which is an argument you can make, I guess, but it's not for sure. And you did kiss Archie knowing that Betty really liked him, so maybe you should have not kissed him. I don't know. Betty doesn't care about this apology though, and what she does is she ditches Veronica on that self-care day and takes Cheryl on board to go get mani-pedis. After cheer, we get this scene of Cheryl in Betty's house where Cheryl's doing her makeup, straddling her lap, and normally that's fine. And then it turns into an interrogation, and I don't know about you, but I would be violently uncomfortable if someone was straddling my lap while asking me very, very personal questions about a murder. Cheryl keeps implying that Betty's sister Polly had something to do with Jason's death, and Betty does a very rational thing, which is threatening to murder Cheryl if she doesn't get out of her house. So I can only imagine how that supported Cheryl's argument. Jughead goes and confronts Archie about how Grundy is using him because he caught them together in the music room earlier that day at school. Hey, maybe we think about our location for a second before we do something highly illegal. Archie gets pissed because Jughead is lightly suggesting, hey, she might be using you, pal, and he blows Jughead off. Alice then goes very passionately into Betty's room to sage it and then tells Betty how she thinks the Blossoms killed Jason. And this event with Cheryl was apparently so traumatic for Betty that she went back to Veronica to befriend her. In this time frame, we also have Archie going to his dad and being like, hey, there's this girl who thinks we shouldn't do the right thing, but I think we should do the right thing. And his dad says, do the right thing. So Archie gains some courage and he decides he's going to go to the police, and now it's game day. Before the game starts, Archie finds Grundy and says that no matter what she says, he is going to go to the police about the gunshot that he heard, and he's going to try to leave her out of it. Of course, there's only so much he can leave out. He then goes to Jughead and says he's going to the police. After game time, Betty and Veronica get shakes at Pops where they both come to the agreement of, let's never let a boy get in our way again. And I'm sure they stick to that pact. At school the next day, Archie tries to go to Weatherby about the gunshot that he heard, but before he can, the sheriff and the principal go and arrest Cheryl. In front of her entire class of peers, Cheryl says, I'm guilty. And then episode 2 ends. We open episode 3 with Cheryl clarifying what she meant at the end of last episode. She reveals that the plan was for Jason to run away after staging a boat accident on the 4th of July. She also says that they heard a gunshot, the same gunshot that Archie and Grundy heard. Despite the gunshot already being confirmed, Archie decides he's still going to come clean, and so he goes to the sheriff and the principal and says, hey, I heard it too. While our group of cool teenagers is hanging out in a student lounge, I guess, Veronica dunks on all of them by saying that she's not a suspect and she has a date tonight. We also learn that Betty and Jughead are going to go revive the school newspaper, and they also realize that someone that no one has really talked to in this murder investigation is Dilton Doyley, the head of the scout troop that found Cheryl the day of Jason's accident. Jughead goes on a mission to dig up some dirt on our bravest soldiers, the Boy Scouts. Grundy is pissed at Archie for going to the police, and she cancels lessons with him completely. Not a great idea, considering he can still go to the police and tell them that you are grooming him. The next day at school, Veronica also learns what a sticky maple is because apparently she got one from Chuck Clayton, the guy that she went on a date with. When she finds out that it's a slut-shaming phrase, she tells Betty she's about to go full dark, no stars.
You want to help me get revenge on Chuck, Betty? Awesome. But you better be willing to go full dark, no stars.
That is one of my favorite lines in the entire show. Don't care what you say. Didn't ask. Veronica goes to the boys' locker room to go and confront Chuck about the post, but Chuck sucks. Jughead then goes to confront Dilton about the gunshot, but Dilton also sucks. However, he did find a nervous-looking scout that he's going to interrogate now. Cheryl thanks Archie for coming forward about the gunshot and decides to reward him with anything but her body. She makes that very clear. And so Archie uses that favor to get in with the Pussycats. Betty creates a group of girls who have been sticky mapled by the football team, which is very nice for Veronica to see, I think. I think it's good to see that support. After Midge tells a story about how Chuck ruined her reputation, Cheryl comes in and says, "Yeah, that sucks, but so does your brother being murdered. If there's one thing Cheryl Blossom can do, it's read a room." It's also revealed in this conversation that there's a secret playbook where the football players keep score of the women they sticky maple, so they are looking for concrete proof now. Jughead interrogates the nervous scout from earlier, and he finds out that it was actually Dilton who shot the gun on July 4th because he's this extreme survivalist and he's teaching the scouts how to survive. I have this sneaking suspicion that Dilton Doily would be a big fan of the Liver King. At school, Archie gets a whirlwind of a lesson of systemic oppression in the arts and music scene after he said he's qualified to write music for women of color. He's absolutely qualified to do that. However, after one suggestion for how to improve a line, they decide, hey, maybe this guy isn't so bad. And so they let him write music with them. Valerie's brother, Valerie being someone who is in the Pussycat Dolls, confirms that there is in fact a playbook and Jason is in it with Polly, and Betty is finally on board to go full dark, no stars.
You want vengeance? You want to go full dark, no stars, Veronica?
Betty then crafts this master plan to go to Pop's where Chuck is to seduce him, to get him to go to Ethel's hot tub, and to get him to admit he did something wrong. We then move to this festival that's going on called the Taste of Riverdale, or a Taste of Riverdale. Riverdale's being tasted. Penelope smacks Alice the moment she lays eyes on her, which I think is fair. Alice is profiting off of her son's death, so maybe she deserves to get smacked. Archie and Jughead snuck in to see the song that Archie wrote, which is nice, but Jughead sneaks away not too long after to go interrogate Dilton. During this performance, Grundy meets Fred, and they talk about Archie's musical talent, and Grundy confirms that he is in fact talented and his dad should support him. But enough about that, let's go check in on our full dark, no stars girlies.
You want to go full dark, no stars, Veronica?
So Betty straight up drugs Chuck. When he wakes up, he finds out that he's been chained to the jacuzzi, and the temperature is rising to get him to confess what he did. This is not at all insane. Chuck finally admits that nothing is happening, and Veronica is perfectly satisfied with this ending. This is the good ending. But it's not enough for Betty. Betty, being corrupted by her black Bob, decides it's not enough, so what does she do? Betty starts lowering Chuck's head into the water with her high heel, while dumping maple syrup on his head, demanding that Jason give an apology to Polly. It's a whole mess of a thing, and Veronica, who is rightfully scared of her friend now, is snapping Betty out of it, being like, hey, whoa, oh my god, calm down. After this situation, Veronica and Betty go to the principal and say, hey, Chuck actually sucks, and here is what the boys of the football team have been doing. And Chuck gets suspended, he gets cut from the football team, and Jughead says in a little narration that's going to come back to bite us in the ass later. Archie goes to meet up with Grundy and says thanks for being nice, and as a thank you they fuck in the school, which, oh my god, guys, Dilton reveals to Betty and Jughead that he does know something that the police don't, and that's that he saw Grundy's car at Sweetwater on July 4th. So now Grundy has been dragged into this and Archie had nothing to do with it. Episode 4 focuses primarily on the drive-in movie theater closing. Jughead is very emotionally attached to this place. It's also the place that he's living at. While Jughead is ranting and pops about how it's unfair that this is happening and how it's the death of cinema and it's revealed that he's a Quentin Tarantino fan, Betty's lost in her thoughts. She's now put together the pieces that Grundy and Archie are in a relationship together, but she doesn't know what to do with that information. However, as if by divine intervention, Fred, Grundy, and Archie all walk in after Grundy's performance somewhere, and Betty seizes this moment to talk to Archie. Betty takes him outside, and Veronica follows shortly after, and they both find out that Archie is in fact being taken advantage of. I would say taken advantage of. His friends are all very concerned for his well-being and trying to tell him, hey, this is not a good situation, but Archie doesn't care. He's in too deep. While that situation is happening, Cheryl spots Hermione and FP. In this episode, he's an unnamed serpent, but in the future it's revealed that he's Jughead's dad and his name is FP, so I'm going to call him FP. It's revealed that FP and Hermione are talking in a confrontation that seems very, very real. Cheryl takes a picture of it, shows it to Veronica, and starts kind of mocking her that her mom is talking to this big bad gang member, which, what's so wrong about that, I guess? Veronica then goes to her mom about it and is like, hey, why were you doing that? And her mom is like, oh, don't worry about it. That's the answer you're going with? Don't worry about it? She's gonna worry about it. Putting that aside, Betty is now on a warpath to take down Grundy. After an unsuccessful fake interview where she finds out Jason was one of Grundy's students, she tries to go to Archie again and says, hey, this is not good for you. Betty starts to research Grundy but finds out very, very quickly there's nothing really online about her. But since it's nothing incredibly weird, Archie is ignoring his friends yet again and saying since they don't understand what his relationship is like, they need to stay out of it. Uh-oh. Oh no. That doesn't sound too good, but what do I know? I'm not in his relationship. I can't judge. I can't put my lens on it. I'm just a little guy. While having a date night at Grundy's house, Archie tries to see if their relationship has any substance or real depth to it by asking her questions about her past. But Grundy very quickly is like, we gotta live in the moment, my guy. And so that conversation ends. While that's happening, we then have Betty and Veronica breaking into Grundy's car very easily, and then finding a lockbox and opening it very easily. And what do they find? A fake driver's license with the name Jennifer Gibson on it and a gun. Something's not adding up here. With the evidence now that Grundy isn't exactly what she seems like, Betty and Veronica are like, great, now Archie is going to listen to us that he needs to get out of that relationship. But Archie, my guy, is still in denial, and so he ignores them. He couldn't ignore the suspicion forever, though, so he does go to Grundy and is like, hey, what's up? Who's this name? What's going on? And Grundy then trauma dumps to this child and says, oh, here is my sad past, Mr. Man. She also refers to Archie as like a savior to her, that he rescued her from this horrible relationship with her ex-husband. And like, hey, maybe we think about how we phrase that kind of statement to the child that you are taking advantage of. Due to Alice not understanding how boundaries work like a normal person, she decides to confront Fred that Archie needs to stay away from Betty, but in doing this she reveals that she has been spying on the Andrews, which is so weird. She also goes into Betty's room to put away her laundry, which what Alice finds though in doing this is a gun that Betty took from Grundy's car and hid it in her dresser. How stupid can you be, my guy? You couldn't think of anything else to do, or why did you even take the gun? Regardless, Alice is worried, and so she goes and finds Betty's diary, and she reads the, I'm assuming, raunchy fan fiction that Betty wrote about Grundy and Archie's situationship that's been going on. At the drive-in, Fred and Hermione are having a actually really nice moment where they're kind of reminiscing about what high school was like in their past relationship, when suddenly a mystery text comes through on Hermione's phone, and she has to run off to powder her nose. Before Fred can think too much, though, on where Hermione might actually be going, Alice jump scares them and they take off into the night. We then shift to Cheryl, Kevin, and Veronica all kind of hanging out in the back of Kevin's truck when they're out of snacks, dude! Shoot! So Kevin leaves to go get more popcorn because Cheryl makes him, and not too long after Kevin leaves, Veronica sees her mom going to talk to FP. Did you guess that she was going to meet up with the serpent guy? No? Okay then. Veronica does some grade A sleuthing and finds out that her dad didn't fully pay off the Southside Serpents for a job that they did, and they're not happy about it. While in the popcorn line though, Kevin gets a bunch of snacks and then is immediately derailed by a cute serpent guy named Joaquin, and they go and make out. We then go back to the school where Archie is gifting Grundy a cello bow. Listen, musicians out there, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if you use different bows for different string instruments, So don't attack me, okay? Please. I don't know. I don't know any better. Anyway, he says his bow is a parting gift, and he finally ends the lessons with Grundy, which good thing someone is putting a stop to this. Before they can sweetly part from each other, though, Alice kicks in the door and accuses Archie and Grundy about what's happening in their situationship and makes them explain it to not only Alice, but to Archie's dad and Betty. Archie tries to protect Grundy by saying, oh, he wanted it, he pursued her, which is not how that works. You are a child and she is the adult in this situation. Alice then tells Betty that she did this to show the kind of guy Archie is, which is also insane because he is a child. This is not his fault. Betty then says if Alice does anything insane, she's going to go to the police and say that she made everything up in her diary and none of it was actually real. So Grundy says, okay, I'll skip town. I'll leave, I'll quit, and you won't see me ever again. And that is solved, I guess. The ending of the episode is as follows. Kevin and his dad get home from the drive-in and see that someone broke in and stole a bunch of evidence and destroyed the sheriff's murder board. Hermione reveals to Veronica that the deal that she had with the serpents was to get them to decrease the value of the drive-in land so that her and Hiram could buy it. Fred, being a decent parent, tells Archie, hey, it's not your fault you got taken advantage of by your teacher. Alice swears she'll stop keeping secrets from Betty, but Betty says, hey, stop projecting Polly and Jason's weird relationship onto me and Archie. That's not who we are. And then Betty texts Archie and is like, hey, so sorry. Everything happened. Anyway, the driveway is closed, Grundy's out of town, and Jughead is officially homeless, so next episode. It is Memorial Day. Not Memorial Day, but it's the day of Jason's memorial. And Cheryl finds out she's not allowed to speak at the memorial because she'll be too emotional. God forbid she be emotional. In the school's newspaper room, Kevin decides to reconstruct the murder board for Jughead and Betty, which does not seem like a good idea. He also says that a lot of tangible evidence was stolen from this, so that's great. That's so good, and I'm so glad that this is helping. I feel like the sheriff should have had a few more fail-safes in place to prevent someone from stealing all of the evidence from a murder investigation, arguably the biggest investigation in this town. At lunchtime, Archie reveals that he cannot focus on music right now because he has to focus on being the captain of the football team. Everyone around him is encouraging him to continue music, so Valerie comes up and says, hey, I know someone in the music industry. Why don't you go talk to him and see what happens? Cheryl in this scene also goes and asks Veronica if she can sleep over the night before her brother's memorial so she's not alone. I think that's fair. I think that's a good thing to ask. That's a decent ask. Through a quick flash of scenes, once again, we establish the following. Mr. Castillo, Val's contact, fucking sucks, and he makes Archie write all of his sheet music in one night because that's the only way he might be able to evaluate how to help Archie. All the guests for Jason's memorial are murder suspects, so it sounds like the Blossoms are handling this tragedy very well. And during her recon mission, Betty found out from a date that she went on solely to get information and not because she was at all interested in the guy. She found out that Jason was running drugs for someone. Betty helps her dad fix the car, and I finally was able to answer a question that I've been having since the beginning of watching this show. I wasn't sure why Betty's dad looked so familiar, and that wasn't until I watched Drew Gooden's Christmas mail video that I realized he's the villain in that movie. Now that's all I'm going to think about the rest of the show. In the scene where Betty and her dad are fixing this car together, we find out that the biggest reason why Polly was sent away was because after a big fight with Jason, she was found hurting herself by her dad, and so they decided, you need to go get help somewhere else. And if there were no ulterior motives, this would be a sweet gesture, I guess, but I have a feeling that he didn't do it with entirely good intentions. Through another quick flash of scenes, we see that Jughead and Betty are going to be searching the Blossom Manor during Jason's memorial, which is great timing. Mr. Castillo decides that he cannot help Archie, despite Archie staying up and doing all that work for him, and a mystery box comes to Pops with a rattlesnake inside of it. I wonder who sent it, and Fred shows up to dispose of the snake. At Veronica's very epic and exciting sleepover, she has the most uncomfortable dinner I have ever watched before. Everything is super tense, everyone's really pissed off, and everyone keeps snapping at Cheryl, and it's wildly uncomfortable. After dinner, Cheryl is showing Veronica pictures of Jason because she's What else is she going to do? And Veronica says that Jason is hot, and Cheryl agrees. So, very normal sibling relationship, I'm sure. Cheryl confides in Veronica that her parents aren't going to let her speak at Jason's memorial, and Veronica immediately is like, oh, I'll help you get that closure. I'll help you say goodbye at the memorial. And Cheryl does this thing where she immediately says, oh, my parents will kill me. And it's not like in a joke. None of it's funny. It's a very, very serious moment. It's wildly uncomfortable, and Veronica doesn't take it nearly as seriously as she should.
And let Penelope and Clifford Blossom do their worst.
Oh, they will. They'll kill me.
Regardless, it's the next day, and as Veronica and Cheryl are getting ready for the memorial, Cheryl asks for just a moment to herself before going downstairs to say goodbye to her brother. I'm sure Cheryl isn't going to do anything dramatic at all. At the memorial, Archie offers Penelope Jason's old jersey and fully retires it on behalf of the coach, which I'm glad someone did it. Before things can get too uncomfortable, Cheryl comes down all in white in the dress that she wore the day that Jason left. She cuts her parents off from getting to the podium before her, and she speaks about how no one wanted to come to her birthday party when she was a kid because she sucked so much, and then she cries. A very good speech brought to you by Cheryl. In the chaos of this, Jughead and Betty sneak away to go upstairs to Jason's room, but they quickly run into Nana Rose, who is terrifying. She confuses Betty for Polly, and what she does is she tells Polly about the engagement ring that's missing and that she was only looking forward to her and Jason's wedding at this point, and now she doesn't have anything. That's a lot of information for Betty to hear, that Jason and Polly were engaged to be wed, and she had no idea. So Betty bounces. She can't handle this information, and she confronts her dad about this blood feud that's going on between the Blossoms and the Coopers, and then he gives a very ominous threat and goes about his day. After witnessing Penelope reprimand Cheryl for having emotions, Veronica realizes her mom's pretty neat. Hermione takes this moment to tell Veronica about the snake threat that she got. We go back to school, and Archie is being offered the position of team captain, but he turns it down for someone who can focus a little more on football. So congrats, Reggie. You didn't win by skill, talent, or heart. Good for you. This episode ends of Betty telling Jughead that she's really suspicious about her parents and they're acting weird, and so now they are suspects in the murder of Jason Blossom. How exciting! Episode 6 opens with breakfast at the Coopers, where Jughead distracts Alice just long enough for Betty to figure out where her sister is being contained. Meanwhile, at school, Archie is realizing suddenly that he has performance anxiety and can't audition for the variety talent show. Archie runs off the stage and tries to convince Val to sing with him to help ease that performance anxiety, but she tells him she's a booked lady, she sings with the Pussycats only. And so he is devastated. And I am too hot for this. It doesn't really matter though that he never properly auditioned because Kevin just gives him a spot anyway, and Veronica says that she'll sing with Archie, so that situation is now all sorted. During this time period, we also see a Pussycats rehearsal where Val is standing up to Josie saying that she doesn't get to sing enough in the band and she doesn't appreciate that. So what does she do? She quits. In a new scene, it's now established that Hermione is doing the books for Fred, which is great. And Fred is talking to her about how he's trying to pitch to the mayor that he should get the demo for the drive-in, which I thought he already had because in a couple episodes ago, during the drive-in episode, it sounded like he did have that contract, so I don't know what changed in between. To surprise her mom for her first day at work, and that's so exciting, Veronica brings a little treat for her, but catches her making out with Fred Andrews. She understandably gets really confused and hurt by this, and she runs off, not understanding the implications that's going to have with her mom's relationship with her dad. Val goes to Archie and is like, hey, I'm out of the band so I can sing with you, and Archie's like, great. But he doesn't decide to tell Veronica this, and when Veronica shows up to sing with Archie, he's like, oh, actually, I replaced you. Veronica's just getting betrayed on all fronts. So she goes to join Josie and the Pussycats. Jughead and Betty go to meet up with Polly, where we find out firstly that she's pregnant, secondly that she was going to run away with Jason on the 4th, and third, before she could even go to their meetup point, she got put in the home. Betty then reveals that Jason is not alive anymore, and Polly is very upset by that, and a very small, scary old woman detains Betty in an office while Alice comes to get her. As Alice is storming out with Betty, Betty's trying to demand answers about what's going on and why didn't Polly know, but you told me she did know. And as they're leaving, they run into Polly, who starts getting upset at her mom about the entire situation that she's in right now. Understandably so. At another very uncomfortable dinner, we learn that Josie's dad is the kind of musician that would make me want to bounce my head off a wall within 2 minutes of meeting him. He tells Josie that it's tragic that Val left the Pussycats because she was the only good thing about the band, which, dude, hey, why did you say that? To distract from a teenager getting absolutely dunked on by her dad, Fred decides now is a good time to pitch to the mayor how badly he deserves that contract. And the mayor responds with pretty much, good for you, but gotta get the buyer's permission, my guy. In another flash, I feel like I keep saying in a flash of several scenes, but there are so many points where this goes back and forth really quickly and you get like little bits of information. So I'm gonna keep saying that. You're welcome. Anyway, Josie and Veronica bond over their daddy issues, which is great for them. Veronica says that she wants things to be normal with her mom and she doesn't want Fred in the picture, which is fair, I think. And Josie says, hey, go tell your, what am I gonna go tell your mom? I can't fix that. Archie then reveals to his dad that he's really, really nervous about the talent show and he doesn't think he's going to do good. And Fred is like, hey, no matter what, I'm proud of you, champ. Hermione tries to get Veronica to sign papers that would award the demo to Fred, but Veronica is pissed that her mom's even trying to help Fred. And so she storms away. Val gets fired from Archie, so she goes back to the Pussycat Dolls and is immediately taken back in open arms. Jughead kisses Betty, and Betty has this vision while kissing him of, hey, we should go to where Polly said the car was stashed and see if it's there. That would confirm her story. I love that's what she was thinking about. At the variety show, Josie and the Pussycat Dolls all sing together, including Veronica, because they didn't kick her out suddenly. And while they perform, you get to see Betty and Jughead find the stashed car chocked full of evidence about Jason being there, drugs being there. However, you get this shot of someone spotting them, so yikes! How could that go bad? Back at the talent show, Josie's dad bounces mid-performance, and that's weird. You couldn't even pretend to like your daughter's music for like 3 minutes? Come on, man. Archie then performs, does a good job, everyone claps, and Archie and Val do a little smooch. After the show, Fred reveals to Veronica that he's doing great right now because he just got awarded the demo, and that pisses her off because she knows exactly what her mom did to do that. The last minute of this episode is Polly broke out of the home that she was in and the car full of evidence was lit on fire right as Sheriff Keller was getting there. So the Rivers are crazy, dude. I really like how this next episode intros with a comic accurate look at the costumes. I thought that was kind of neat, and it's Jughead wrestling with this concept of what does home mean to him. He doesn't really have one of those right now. He's living in a little cupboard under the stairs of his school, so I wonder if he's gonna have magical powers later on. Archie jump scares Jughead immediately after his shower, which is great, and then Jughead reveals he's homeless right now, which is not so great. Once the gang is in school though, Betty reveals to all of them that her parents don't want her to go to the police that Polly escaped because what if Polly gets linked to the murders or what if she gets framed? But since they are not in a contained location, someone overhears and texts Cheryl about this, and then Cheryl goes to the police and is like, Polly escaped, she probably burned the car and killed my brother, which is quite the assumption to make, but sure. Cheryl then tweets out that Polly killed her brother and oh no, we learned that maybe we should talk about confidential information in a contained environment. Now the Coopers are desperate to find Polly to get ahead of the narrative that the Blossoms are trying to put out, and they start this search party in the woods. And since Veronica's so good about reading the room, she tells Kevin they gotta go clubbing together soon to piss off her mom. Isn't that the perfect conversation to be having when you're looking for a lost pregnant woman in the woods? While they're all searching though, they run into the Blossoms who have hunting dogs with them, also trying to find Polly, and Alice decides, we gotta get ahead and establish a narrative. Using the background of a church, Alice decides to expose a family secret that Polly is carrying Jason's baby and she would never hurt Jason, which from a PR standpoint is a good move, but from a moral standpoint, Jughead walks Betty home and asks her,
what is it? I mean, besides everything.
Betty says she's blaming herself and feels guilty for Polly running away because if she didn't go to the home, then Polly wouldn't have been upset and left, and As she's telling this story, she tells Jughead about the first time Polly ever ran away from home. Then she has an idea on where Polly might be hiding. She runs home and finds Polly lurking in the attic, which is not at all terrifying and not at all one of my biggest fears. Polly then reveals that her parents are going to try and force her to give up her babies, and Betty responds with, "That's not a thing anymore." And before Polly can refute that with her personal experience that she's gone through with her parents, Alice and Hal get home, so Polly's just gonna have to stay quiet in the attic. After Jughead pleads with his dad to give Fred another chance, FP goes back to Fred's construction site and asks if the job offer was real. Fred hires him, which is fairly nice, I think, considering the last time he was there, he allegedly stole materials. I don't know. That seems nice to me, to give him another, I don't know, that seems nice. Fred gets a phone call, he has to bounce, but not before Hermione comes into the trailer and sees FP. She's very wary of him because he did just give her a rattlesnake in a box, but he's like, oh, chill. And so I guess it's fine now. At the Cooper residence, Betty asks her parents, hey, can Polly live here? And her parents are like, yeah, if she gives up the baby, which is the thing that Polly said was going to happen before Betty was like, that's not how time works anymore, Polly. This leads Betty down a spiral, and the next day at school, Betty is venting about this to Veronica, and Veronica offers to help, but before any further progress can be made there, Cheryl comes in and says that she wants to help Polly. This baby's a game changer. After school, though, it's clubbing time, and I'm really confused how these teenagers got into a club. I mean, I know small towns, it's easy to do that, but they're like 15 to 16. How easy can it be? After some very intense dancing, Veronica sits down with Josie, Kevin, and Reggie to talk about how her life is so hard because she had to give up her yachts and her club cards, and I'm sure these are problems that small town Americans can very much relate to. What we do learn, though, is a lot of her anger is coming from when all these material things were being taken away. Veronica's mom told her the one thing no one can ever take away from her is her name. And then her mom went and did that, so it's understandable that she is upset. Veronica's mom cuts off her card and Veronica sees it's time to negotiate some things with her. After FP treats Fred, Jughead, and Archie to a dinner at Pop's, they go and rock out in Archie's garage, where they learn a lot about how their dads used to work together, until they didn't anymore. FP reveals that he used to be business partners with Fred, but after FP took one too many bad jobs and got bailed out of jail one too many times, Fred cut him loose. He bailed him out of jail one last time and then said that bail money was a buyout of the company. After this reveal, FP starts to spiral into alcohol, and so Jughead takes him home and he starts telling him about how his mom is doing and how his sister Jellybean is doing and how their life is so great. Then his dad falls asleep and Jughead realizes his dad doesn't care about any of that. It doesn't matter to him. At the Andrews place, Archie kind of confronts Fred about it and is like, yo, that was not cool of you to do. And Fred makes a very good point about how having a business partner that is going in and out of jail, stealing materials, that does not look good for a business and makes him a liability. However, Archie also makes a good point about how Jughead ended up getting hurt in that decision and there was nothing really done to protect Jughead, who has been and used to be at that time Archie's closest friend. Okay, time for a conclusion speedrun because this is going on. This is a long one. Hermione tells Veronica that she will tell her dad that she forged Veronica's signature, and Veronica says that she just wants things to be normal again, which is fair, I think. She's not handling these changes well. I think too much is happening too fast and she can't keep up. At school, the sheriff and the principal find Jughead's murder board that he was just keeping out in the open at school, and so they bring Jughead in for questioning, and Jughead is really scared because kids like him get framed for crimes all the time. He's the easy one, he's the scapegoat, and the sheriff makes some very, very loose connections between Jughead and Jason. And that's evidence, I guess. After FP no-shows for helping his son get out of jail, Fred shows up and he forges a time card stating that Jughead was actually working for him on that day, so there's no way that Jughead could have killed Jason. At Pop's, Polly meets Cheryl for the first time since Jason's death, and she apologizes for what happened to Jason, but Cheryl tells Polly she has to leave because her parents are going to try and take away Polly's baby. Jughead is now living in Archie's house, which is great. They're having a good time, but the closing shot is of Jason's Letterman jacket in FP's trailer. So I can only imagine where we're gonna go from here. The next day at school, a gaggle of teenagers try to figure out how to get Polly out of the situation that she's currently in. The Blossoms want the baby, but not Polly, and the Coopers want Polly, but not the baby, so it's a real situation they're in. Veronica relates to this experience by telling a story that one time she was invited to a Vanity Fair Oscars party and Elton John's Oscar party, and she didn't know which one to go to. Who was Veronica in New York to be invited to both of these parties? Who was she? Veronica then pitches the idea of a baby shower to try and bring the Coopers and the Blossoms together so that there is a peaceful meeting of sorts. And as if she's a sleeper agent, Alice Cooper appears in the school out of nowhere and pulls Veronica and Betty aside to talk to them. Alice is pissed for some reason that Polly has a safe home with Veronica, and Betty says, if you can't be a normal grandma, then stay out of the way. I don't know. I think that's kind of fair, because why would you be upset that your pregnant daughter has somewhere safe to live? I don't know. At the Andrews residence, times are tough. Fred's construction crew has officially pulled out because Cliff Blossom paid them off to not work for him anymore, and so he doesn't know what to do with the project. He's sinking so much money into it, and he's losing money. He's about to go bankrupt, essentially. And Fred tries to confront Cliff about this and be like, hey, I'm just a middleman. Leave me out of it. But Cliff doesn't care. Rich people don't care about your problems. But since Archie's like a relatively sweet guy, he brings some of his football buddies together and they help Fred at least get started with breaking ground. One night after construction though, Moose is attacked by people with crowbars after he catches them hitting the equipment and damaging it. The Blossoms are responsible for this, clearly, but the sheriff doesn't care, so what does Archie do? He decides he's gonna go to a serpent bar and investigate and see if anyone there is someone who beat up Moose. Archie offers Jughead to go along with them, and Jughead says, please leave me out of this. You shouldn't go. Don't do this. Please don't. Stop. If there's one thing Archie Andrews does, though, it's not listen. So he goes to this bar with his football buddies, and Moose says, that guy kind of sort of vaguely looks like someone who beat me up, and Archie decides to start a fight. FP though sees this happening, and he very quickly gets Archie and pulls him out of the bar and says, hey, and Fred shows up to pick up Archie because FP called him and was like, yo, your son's at this bar, you might want to get here soon. They also have this heart-to-heart moment where Fred tells FP about why Archie is on this mission and that he's just trying to figure out what's going on and why people are attacking his equipment because he's actively losing money, and FP agrees to help him out, try and figure out who's doing this. But let's pause on the business talk and talk about the baby shower of the century. Hermione is very supportive of Polly, and Polly wants to bring both the Blossoms and the Coopers to the baby shower so that they can maybe mend things in their relationship. Hermione is a little nervous about the war that's going to break out in her apartment though, so she's a little hesitant. However, she's very quickly convinced to go talk to Alice because it's what Polly wants and she deserves to have the baby shower she wants. Hermione talks to Alice and very quickly and successfully convinces her to come to the baby shower. Polly then makes Betty the godmother, and it is baby shower time. Alice shows up and she's very, very supportive of Polly. She's there for her, she's in the moment. They have this very sweet moment that's quickly ended by Cheryl kicking in the door with a very fancy baby stroller. Nana Rose uses a crystal to tell Polly that she's going to be having twins, which is very exciting for her. And then Archie busts in and confronts Jughead that his dad is a serpent, which is good and great, I'm sure. And not long after that fight, we then have Alice and Penelope fighting, which Polly quickly shuts down by saying, this is the reason why Jason is dead, which is a lot to put on people, but understandable. The hate did fuel them to try and run away together, and it's a mess. Alice tries to smooth things over with Polly by apologizing and saying that she does truly want Polly to come home, but Polly reveals that her dad offered to pay for an abortion, so she wants nothing to do with him. Archie then has this heart-to-heart moment with his dad where he talks about how kids are allowed to have different dreams than their parents, and maybe his kids someday will be inspired by their grandfather and want to go into construction. It's a very sweet moment. I definitely didn't cry while watching it. I swear I don't have issues. guys. It's sweet. It's sweet. After the baby shower, Jughead admits to Betty that he's very ashamed of his dad and didn't want to tell her that he's a serpent because they don't have the best reputation. Betty reassures Jughead that she does want to know everything about him, and they go to FP's trailer to see did he have anything to do with Jason's disappearance. FP reveals that, yeah, he did give Jason some drugs to run for him because that was the trade for the car that FP got him so that he could run away. And Jughead asks, I think, the next reasonable question of, did you have anything to do with the murder? To which he says, no. Alice then confronts Hal about what Polly said and does one of the craziest fight moves I have ever seen. Alice says then that she's hurt because Hal tried to do the same thing to her, and now he's done it to her daughter. It's a whole thing. The conclusion of this episode is as follows. Jughead is scared about his dad's involvement with this case because he doesn't know what the implications will be for long term, what their life is going to look like. Archie then says he thinks of Jughead like a brother, which is very nice and very sweet. It's then revealed that Joaquin is a double agent and he is going out with Kevin to try and get more information. FP then gives Jason's jacket to Joaquin for him to go and hide it because things are starting to heat up a little bit and they all have roles to play. The next day, he then brings the serpents to Fred's construction site as his new crew so that they can break ground on the work. Betty then tells Polly that Alice kicked out Hal, but that doesn't matter. Polly goes to live with the Blossoms instead, and that devastates Alice. Okay. We're going to try and speed things a little up because, oh my god, this is a long one. The Blossom Board of Trustees are all in town because with Jason's death, they want to see what's going to happen with the business now. So they go to Cheryl to do the tree tapping ceremony, but Cheryl needs an escort because she has a lot going on. So they pick out Archie, and Archie at first is very hesitant to do that because apparently he's dating Val. At some point that happened. But when Penelope offers to put Archie in a music program that he's been dying to get into, who's he to say no to that? In this episode, Veronica's wrestling a lot with the guilt of talking to a lawyer about making a statement for her dad. The lawyer and her mom are both pushing, you need to give a positive statement to reduce your dad's sentence, but she doesn't feel positively about anything her dad has done. Ethel reads this uber depressing poem in front of the class, and Veronica reaches out to her because it was clearly a cry for help. However, she was being a little too nice apparently, and Kevin clocks her for that, and Veronica admits that she made a girl drink sewer water one time, which is normal. Speeding along, it is tree tapping day, and Archie is there to support Cheryl fully. He's, I think, the only one rooting for her on this day, but it goes off with no hitches. It's great. He defends her when Board of Trustee members are like, she has emotions, and oh my goodness. They all take a big group picture to celebrate this incredible moment, and Archie tries to sneakily ask Polly if she's okay, and she blows him off. Ethel reveals in another conversation with Veronica that something her parents are fighting about is money. Apparently, they lost a ton of money recently, and Ethel doesn't really know why. When it's revealed that Ethel's last name is Muggs, Hermione pulls Veronica aside and is like, it's kind of your dad's fault they don't have any money anymore. They were in business with him, and it's kind of on them for that. Veronica says that this family should absolutely testify against her dad, and she gets pissed off at her mom. Back at the tree tapping ceremony day, Cheryl tells Archie that there is a board dinner coming up soon, and she really wants him to be an escort there too. And it's not just Cheryl that's pushing this, it's also her dad, Cliff, who is very shocked that Archie came in the first place, but now that he's there, he's trying to keep him in. It was this moment where I realized that Archie is just being used as the face of the company, and he's sort of the balance to Cheryl. Archie then goes to the Coopers and says, everything is fine, everything is great, she is well. And Alice decides that she's going to write a smear article about how there's a hostile takeover of the Blossom maple syrup industry. That seems like a good idea when your pregnant daughter is alone in that house. At the lodge residence, Veronica gives Ethel a bunch of her old clothes and belongings because she wants nothing to do with the love that her father tried to buy her. Veronica tries to buy back Betty's love, and it works. Funny how that works. As Archie is getting a custom suit made for him, he tells Cliff, hey, can you please help my dad out? I'll sacrifice going to music school. I just want you to help him, please. And Cliff has this moment of like, oh my god, a son who cares about his dad? And so he says that after dinner they can discuss further. At school, so much happens. Oh my god, I know I keep saying that, but there's a lot that happens in this show, guys. They crammed a lot into each episode. Betty has a breakdown about her family and how she can't fix anything and it sucks. Val is pissed at Archie for pimping himself out, but Archie, I think, makes a good point of when you're in the arts and an opportunity arises to make a connection, like hanging out with a guy who's a board member of a music program that's super exclusive. I think you kind of have to jump on that. Kevin then tells Veronica that Ethel's dad attempted to overdose, and so she spirals completely about that, and then she rips off her pearls that her dad gave her and cries in a bathroom, which is, I mean, fuck. God, what else are you supposed to do? At the big family dinner, Cliff decides maybe he should stop messing with the less fortunate, and so he tells Archie that he will help Fred. And he admits to Archie that he is being used to make Cheryl's steam more stable and like she would be a good heir to the company. I know my PR, baby! While dancing with Polly, Archie finds out that she's there to find out if the Blossoms had anything to do with the murder of Jason, which is very big brain of her, but before Archie can really ask any more questions, we see Cheryl run outside, clearly upset by something her parents said. Archie goes to check up on her, and she's upset because everyone thinks that she's this crazy person and that she's unstable and unable to run the company. And Archie is there for her. He supports her. He's fine. He's cool with it. And then she kisses him, and Archie doesn't really know what to do with this, so he just runs away from her. But in running away from her, he does find out that Cliff put Hiram in jail. Again, maybe we should think about where we are before we start saying these very important pieces of information. At the hospital, Veronica brings flowers for Ethel and her mom, which is a very nice gesture, and she's just fully consumed by the guilt that her dad made Ethel's dad do this. And so she reveals her last name. Ethel's mom then thinks it's a good time to absolutely obliterate Veronica and tell her that she needs to tell the truth and her dad deserves Surratt. Uh-oh, that's a teenager you're saying that to. This, however, solidifies for Veronica that she's not going to keep lying for her dad. Something needs to happen. The ending of the episode is as follows. Betty tells Alice that Polly is safe and that she's doing investigative work. Alice also gets offered a job as the advisor for the school's newspaper, so that's great. She has work again. Good for her. Val dumps Archie because of the whole Cheryl thing, which is great. I wasn't emotionally invested in their relationship. I didn't even know when they started dating. Fred said that he's going to stick by Lodge Industries, but he wants a 20% stake in the company so that he has some skin in the game, so to speak. Archie reveals to Betty and Jughead that Cliff was the one who put Hiram in jail, and we end this episode with a shot of Cheryl scribbling out Polly and Archie's faces. Episode 10. Let's do this. It is Jughead's birthday, which means this is going to be a party episode. Let's go. Since Archie's dad is out of town to finalize his divorce with Archie's mom, they have a house to use for the weekend for the coolest party of the year. And despite Archie's initial pushback of saying, hey, Jughead doesn't like parties, maybe we shouldn't throw him a party, he gives in pretty quickly to the idea once Betty is like, no, we're throwing him a party. Before school, Veronica runs into Hiram's lawyer, who is trying so hard to convince her that she needs to humanize Hiram in order to reduce his sentence. She doesn't want to hear that though, so she runs to her safe space of school, only to immediately find out that Cliff is the reason why her dad is in jail. While at school, Chuck comes back from his suspension, which activates sleeper agent Betty, and she goes on a mission to figure out what he's doing talking to Ethel. She confronts him, he calls her Dark Betty, and she almost slaps the shit out of him in the cafeteria, which is great. That doesn't at all prove his point. At the Andrews residence, Jughead makes dinner for him and Archie of a pizza that was in the oven, which is so nice and so fancy. And Jughead is talking about how excited he is to spend his birthday with Archie watching movies together, but Archie then is like, that's great, but you're going with Betty. And Jughead gets upset by that because it's disrupting what he wants to do for his birthday. Have we considered doing what Jughead wants to do for his birthday? And at this point, all he knows is that he's going to be hanging out with his girlfriend on his birthday. That's it. And he's already upset. Veronica in this episode is now on a mission to figure out the link between the Lodges and the Blossoms when she finds out that the Blossoms had been paying Lodge Industries for a while up until her dad's arrest. Veronica questions her mom about this, and Hermione responds with pretty much, don't look over there, stop that, stop. No, That's not for you. Feeling pissed off about her parents, Veronica goes to cheer practice and immediately decides to compete with Cheryl to be the new cheer captain. And of course Veronica wins, because of course the protagonists always win, guys. Cheryl sucks. She then goes to Hiram's lawyer and is like, hey, here's this information that I found. Maybe we should look in this direction. And he recites the same thing that her mom said pretty much, except with an added dose of, hey, stop that because your dad could be accused of murdering Jason. But none of that matters because it's party time. Archie, being pissed off that his dad is not trying to fix his relationship with his mom, he decides, let's have a little fun and drink at this party. Veronica rants to Kevin about this letter that Hiram wrote to Veronica that is essentially a threat saying that she needs to testify on his behalf. But because the kids don't check their surroundings, Joaquin overhears this, and now he has that bit of intel in his head. Betty gives this very unsettling version of Happy Birthday, which I think I don't like it because of the way that it's shot. It's just very unnatural, unnerving. I don't like it. Anyway, Veronica cries in Archie's kitchen because her dad is threatening her, and that's understandably upsetting. But before we can even process that emotion, Cheryl and Chuck are here to cause some good old-fashioned, very legal chaos. Jughead is pissed off about this, and he goes to the garage to hide out, and Archie comes in and is like, dude, I think Val wants to get back together. She said nothing to him, though. And then FP shows up, and Jughead is shocked that his dad even came for his birthday. FP goes inside to drop off his gift, and Veronica realizes, oh, that serpent that my mom was talking to is Jughead's dad. FP then goes to Joaquin and is like, hey, have you found out anything since you're kissing the sheriff's son? And Joaquin says what he overheard earlier. And then we get the most notorious scene from Riverdale season 1.
I'm weird. I'm a weirdo.
Val throws a drink on Archie because he's hammered and has no concept of boundaries right now, which is super cool. And then he goes to his room and drunk dials his dad, which is also super cool. Jughead tries to leave the party, and then Cheryl's like, no, we're all staying. So she locks the door and holds everyone hostage so that they can all reveal their dark secrets. The secrets are as follows. Veronica accuses Cheryl of incest with her brother, of course. Dilton reveals that he saw Grundy's car at Sweetwater on the 4th, and then people make the connection of Archie fucked a teacher. Good for him. Please stop cheering this on. Chuck then reveals what happened the night he got, tortured? Jughead decks him in the face. Chuck retaliates, which is so smart because Chuck is a football player and Jughead, I don't think, has done a sport in his life. Then FP drags Chuck out and he makes Jughead go back into the party to talk to Betty and comfort her. Archie reveals the reason why he called his dad was to convince him to not sign the divorce papers. Veronica then says that she doesn't want her dad's threat to be true, so she might testify for him. And then they make out. Yeah, no, good job, guys. Veronica then agrees to give a statement about how much her parents love her, which for some reason doesn't seem like it's motivated by love. Then Veronica tells Betty she's going to help her find the truth about this murder, and Fred brings back Archie's mom, Mary, from Chicago. So it's homecoming weekend, which is why Mary's back in town. It's not because they're getting back together. Don't worry, they're not getting back together. Jughead goes to FP's trailer and sees that it's all cleaned up and that his dad has shaved, and he's also read Jughead's manuscript about Jason's murder. And at first it seems like he's being very supportive of Jughead's work, only to kind of get that implication towards the end of the conversation that maybe he is just trying to figure out some stuff about Jason's murder. At school, Archie is trying to convince Veronica, hey, you should go out with me, but Veronica's like, hey, my dad is actually maybe linked to the murder of this town's favorite teenager, so maybe I don't go out with you right now. Maybe now's a bad time. Allison pulls Betty and Veronica into the newsroom and is like, hey guys, the three of us are the only ones who have not killed Jason for sure. To which I'm surprised that we cannot rule out anyone else. But Alice continues and says that Betty needs to ask Jughead or FP about their involvements with the murder. Betty obviously refuses immediately and is like, my boyfriend would never do that, and my boyfriend says that his dad didn't do it, so got him. After Betty leaves with Veronica, however, Veronica loops back and tells Alice she's in because she wants to figure out how her dad's linked. At lunch, Cheryl is telling people that she is going to be co-campaigning for Homecoming Queen with Polly because it should have been Jason and Polly on the stage getting that award, which begs the question, how old are Polly, Jason, and Cheryl? Because They do say that Polly is Betty's older sister, and Betty's like 15 or 16. She's a sophomore in high school. But Cheryl's also in the same classes as Betty and Veronica and Archie and Kevin, who are all 15 to 16. So that would imply either Jason was wildly smart and ahead of her in classes, or Cheryl failed a few classes and that's why she's there. But then it begs the question of, how old is Polly? Was she supposed to be a senior? Those are the questions I have, though. It's messy, but back to the story. Archie asks to sing for the homecoming dance and is immediately shut down and told his songs are too depressing. Veronica then offers to sing with him and they'll do upbeat, happy song covers, which is great. But Veronica has a price. She pulls Archie into an abandoned classroom, which thank God someone finally thought to have a private conversation in a private space. But she says in exchange for singing with him and helping him perform at the homecoming dance, she wants him to help her search FP's trailer without Jughead knowing. Alice invites Jughead and his dad over for dinner before the dance, and Jughead is so happy about this. He feels like his life is fully on track. Things are coming together. His girlfriend's family wants to meet his family. It's great. Jughead also reveals to Archie about his dad's interest in his work, particularly about Jason's death, and that immediately sets up a flag in Archie's brain. He then goes to Veronica and says that he's in and they're gonna do a little bit of spy work. At the Blossom Manor, Polly is really struggling to find any sort of clues about Jason and the Blossom's involvement with his murder, any of that. All she's found out is Cliff Blossom wears wigs, and I could have told you that for free. As a way to get into Cheryl's parents' room, Polly convinced Cheryl that they should borrow some of her mom's jewelry for the dance, but in doing this, they find the engagement ring that Jason gave to Polly. Polly is obviously upset by this, and Penelope decides to lie, I guess, would be the word I would use. Lie. And she tells Polly that Jason threw the ring at Cliff. That's why she has it. She's holding on to it because of that memory. Penelope drugs Polly, and then Cliff, Polly, and Cheryl all have this conversation around Polly's unconscious body, where Cliff reveals that he believes he should have been grooming Cheryl to take over the family business instead of her brother. Great, this is a good time to have that conversation, guys. Great job. Cheryl then tells her parents that she flushed the ring down the toilet in order to tie up any loose ends of Polly saying they still had the ring, and the ring being a piece of evidence, this whole thing. At the Coopers, Alice starts interrogating FP about his work history, but before she can go too deep into it, Betty invited Hal over for this dinner, which is chaos. This sparks that thing that adults do when they're fighting really passive-aggressively and they're trying to make it seem like they're not fighting, but it's very clear to everyone in the room that they are. FP then starts to reveal that Hal and Alice were fighting about something during their homecoming dance, but Alice quickly shuts it down and Betty's suspicious. Meanwhile, Archie and Veronica successfully break into FP's trailer and they search around for clues trying to link Jason and FP together, but they don't find anything, which you would assume is a relief, but Veronica is so stressed out about her dad coming back that she thinks that maybe they missed something. However, once Archie says a vaguely related sports metaphor, things are fine, and they go to the dance. Jughead tells FP that he wants to live with him again, but FP says that they're going to be moving to Ohio to be with his mom and sister, and Jughead is really wrestling with leaving Betty or staying for Betty and leaving his family. Archie and Veronica arrive at the dance, but immediately stop to talk to Alice, and Betty sees that across the room and flags that in her brain as that's weird, but before she can question them, they go up on stage to perform their covers. During this scene, we see the police trying to overturn FP's trailer, trying to find any bit of evidence linking him to Jason as well. But we just saw those crazy kids. They were unable to do that. After their performance, Betty confronts Archie and Veronica about why they were talking to her mom and finds out that they were doing the espionage plan that Betty turned down. She's upset. Then Jughead finds out and he gets upset, and he realizes that Alice didn't actually want to have dinner with him and his dad. It was just a ruse so that Archie and Veronica could go find evidence about his dad. But before he can get too angry, all the parents run out and tell us that FP has been arrested for the murder of Jason. Upon hearing this, Jughead takes off. He runs off into the night and no one follows him. Hermione expresses concern that if FP says anything about Hiram, they'll be in trouble, so she tells Veronica that they need to be able to cut ties with her dad, and she's starting to find passports so that they can flee the country at a moment's notice. Mary asks Archie to move to Chicago because he'll be safer there and he can pursue music there and get a better look at his music education, and Archie thinks about it. And finally, Archie and Veronica find Betty at Pop's, but before Betty can blow them off because she's pissed at them, they reveal that that lockbox was never at FP's trailer. Someone's framing him. Episode 12 begins with Jughead at a bus station at a payphone talking to his mom. He's telling her about how he got a bus ticket to go and see her and Jellybean and how he's so excited to be with his family again. But in this phone call, it very much comes across like he's not really welcome there anymore. Devastated by this, he decides he's gotta just go somewhere far away. And so he gets a bus ticket for the first thing out of town, which happens to be a bus to Florida. Archie and Betty are so wildly unsuccessful at finding Jughead that it takes Veronica, someone who's been here for like a couple months, to say, hey guys, he's probably at Pop's, the only place that's open 24 hours in this town. Sure enough, he's there, and they tell Jughead that the gun was planted after they left the trailer. So maybe it's a good thing that they went to the trailer. FP reading this story that Jughead was writing is so helpful for this interrogation because he knows exactly what he needs to say in order to get the police to believe that he did the murder. Despite the teenage sleuths saying, hey, this guy's being framed, that guy already said he did the crime, so the police don't care. At lunch the next day, Jughead comes in after being interrogated at the police station to go and apologize to Cheryl about how his dad allegedly killed her brother. Cheryl clocks him though, and instead of Cheryl being punished for just wailing on Jughead, Jughead gets sent to the principal's office where the principal is like, maybe you should just finish the year virtually. Late that night in the Cooper house, there is some banging going on, and Alice and Betty sneak around to find Hal in the basement trying to take all the evidence that he stole from Sheriff Keller's house. He stole all this evidence so that the Cooper name could be kept out of this crime, but I feel like in doing that, he just made it so much worse. Hal has been fighting so hard to keep Jason and Polly apart because they have incest babies together. That's right, Polly and Jason are third cousins. So they have incest babies. The Coopers then go on a late night raid to the Blossom Manor and they steal Polly back. At Pop's the next day, Mary tells Archie and Jughead that she tried to pose as FP's lawyer to get more information and she found out that FP's one and only phone call was to Joaquin, which is weird. She then tells Jughead to go and see his dad because she doesn't know the next time he'll be able to. This just results in more trauma for Jughead though. It's fine, no one's looking out for him. It's okay, it's great, it's okay, it's fine, guys. While Jughead's over getting traumatized, Archie and Veronica start talking about how weird it is that Joaquin was the one phone call. So what do? They go get Kevin and they make Joaquin talk about everything that happened. And what Joaquin tells us is a little wild. FP had called him on the 11th, the day that Jason died, to clean up a murder mess, which is so exciting for him, I'm sure. The only other serpent who knew about this was Mustang, who is the serpent that Archie tried to fight in the serpent bar because Moose thought maybe he got attacked by him. So these teenage sleuths go and talk to Mustang, give him the business, but before they can do that, he died of an overdose, allegedly. It looks like he did, at least, and so guess he's not going to be saying anything. Kevin gets his dad on the scene, and the cops almost immediately find a bag with the initials HL on it, and the sheriff immediately jumps to Hermione Lodge instead of Hiram Lodge, maybe. The guy that's in jail? Has a lot of money? That guy, maybe? Anyway, Hiram's back in the picture now of maybe he was involved in Jason's murder, which is so exciting for him. Joaquin realizes he needs to skip town before he's killed next, but before he leaves, he reveals one last thing to Kevin. Kevin, Jughead, and Betty then go to the place where the car was stored and they find the duffel bag with Jason's Letterman jacket in it that FP gave to Joaquin. Taking this bag back to Archie's garage, the quintet reunites to see what mysteries does this jacket hold. And through leaps and bounds and stretches of logic, Betty finds a flash drive that fell into the inseam of the jacket, and on it the contents, oh god, they're bad. That's bad. Betty calls Cheryl and tells her to get out of her house, and then we see the footage of Cliff Blossom killing Jason and taking the engagement ring back. We also learn in this that Cliff forced FP to confess because if he didn't, then he would murder Jughead, which is so normal. Because Cliff can't face the music of his own crime, he decides to hang himself, but not before we learn that the Blossom Maple Syrup Empire is actually a front for drugs. Guys, I said there was a lot to unpack, okay? It's a lot. But we're on the final episode now. Both Jughead and Alice narrate this opening scene, so I'm gonna fly through what their narration is. What happened was, once Jason found out about the drug operation that was happening behind the Maple front, he told Cliff that he was going to go to the police about all of it. Jason then got kidnapped by Mustang, who Cliff later killed and made it look like an overdose. Cliff then framed Hiram for the murder to get his name as far away from it as possible. And then, because the sheriff is so in denial about all of this, he still is holding FP in jail because he wants FP to give names of serpents that might have been drug running for Cliff. Maybe Cliff hired other people. I don't know, dude. I don't know. Maybe Cliff hired someone else. Betty and Archie are both being recognized at the Jubilee. It's great. It's wonderful, but they refuse to recognize Jughead because he's just a dirty little serpent man. Veronica then confesses to Betty that she has kissed Archie before, and Betty doesn't care. She's in a relationship. Guys, you could have done this like so long ago. Come on. Then there's this weird moment of Archie confirming with Betty that it's okay to date Veronica, but then he starts to go down this other sentence that to me seemed like he was going to ask, have you ever seen us together or imagined us together? It's so insane that he would be asking that. But before he can finish it, Betty cuts him off and is like, we're so lucky to be with the people we're with. Crisis averted, I guess. Penelope then is Mother of the Year, I guess, and tells Cheryl to stop crying about her dead dad because she never loved him anyway, so why cry about him? She also then is like, maybe we should just do what he did because it's better than being in this limbo that we're in right now, which is so insane to say to your daughter, but sure. Hermione replaces the Serpent crew with a real crew because she's trying to provide integrity to Lodge Industries and she offers to buy out Fred. Great, good time. Fred said he'll think about it. Betty writes an article about why FP is innocent and her parents are like, this is great, but we can't publish it because you might get attacked by people who hate the Serpents. Fair enough. I think that is a perfectly reasonable thing to say. Then Betty and Veronica are hanging out and Veronica's like, are you sure that I can date Archie? And Betty's like, I don't care. I'm with another guy. Also, I'm gonna publish this crazy article talking about why the Serpents are okay. Slowing down just a tiny bit. Jughead meets a social worker who is working his case, who has told him that he is going to be moving to the South Side with a foster family, and he will be transferring high schools all before the end of the week, which feels really fast. I feel like that's not how it works in real. I don't know how it works in real life, but I think it's not that. Archie tries to plea with FP to get him to take some kind of deal so that Jughead doesn't have to move, but FP is like, you gotta be there for him, and dismisses Archie pretty much. At school the next day, Veronica and Jughead realize that they both have a lot in common. They're both social pariahs, they have dads in jail, they both don't talk like real people. Archie is just dating his best friend at this point. At this lunch, Cheryl comes up to Jughead and is like, hey, sorry for smacking you around. That's my bad. Here's a spider brooch that's really valuable. And I think we're not being concerned enough about Cheryl's well-being here, guys. Guys, there's a lot of things happening that are red flags. Before Veronica can fully talk to Cheryl about whether or not she's okay, though, Kevin comes rushing in and tells Jughead and Veronica something happened to Betty's locker. We then see that it's been vandalized and covered with pig's blood, which is just so normal. Guys, this is so normal. Betty's angry at her mom for keeping secrets because of course Alice is keeping more secrets, and so Betty snaps at her, and then Alice is like, I went through the same thing Polly went through with your dad. I had a mystery kid. You have a brother out there somewhere. God, dude. Of course she does. Archie, Betty, and Veronica realize Jughead is missing. He's not there. Where did he go? He went to the Southside High, apparently, because you can just immediately transfer schools, I guess. That's a thing that you can do, and you don't have to do any paperwork or anything like that. That's so silly. Anyway, this trio charges to this high school to rescue Jughead, it goes great somehow. I don't know how they didn't get in trouble for leaving in the middle of a school day, but sure. After saving Jughead from that very stinky other person's school, Veronica gets a text from Cheryl's thanking her for trying, but she's gonna go be with Jason. Maybe we should have looked more closely at those red flags. I don't know, dude. I don't know. The quartet panics, and so they get to Sweetwater River somehow. I don't know who of them can drive, but apparently one of them can drive them there. They get there just in time to see Cheryl fall into the water, and so they are moving and grooving to try and get to her. Archie punches through ice, which is just so fun for him, I'm sure, and he rescues Cheryl. Everything is great. She's alive. She goes to Veronica's to warm up, and now it's time for the Jubilee. At the Jubilee, Veronica confronts Archie because she noticed that he he was looking willfully. Is that a word? She asks if he has a crush on Betty because of the way he was looking at her when she hugged Jughead, and he was like, no, I just want to be the Jughead to your Betty. I want to be your soulmate. In celebration of the town coming together and everything being great and perfect, and the end is great. The Pussycat Dolls play Archie's song, which is fun, and he gets to sing it with them. Then Betty gives this speech that's pretty much like, we are all Riverdale, even the Southside Serpents, even the Jones family. We are all truly Riverdale. Everyone claps. It's great. It's a good moment. And then we get this like closing shot. Everyone is happy. They're in a booth at Pop's, but Cheryl then lights her mansion on fire, and everything is not okay. That wasn't the end. They faked us out. After we see Cheryl light her mansion on fire, we cut to a very epic dual sex scene where it's going back and forth between Betty and Jughead and Veronica and Archie. Before Betty and Jughead can get too into it though, the Southside Serpents show up at FP's trailer where they are, and they're like, you're gonna be in our gang now because your dad didn't rat us out. And Jughead sees no issues with that, so he's in a gang now, good for him. The next morning, Archie meets his dad at Pop's for breakfast, and Archie goes to wash his hands when suddenly a robber comes into Pop's and threatens Archie's dad. Before Archie can intervene though, his dad gets shot, and that's season 1 of Riverdale. We made it, folks. Somehow, we got there. We finished.
Okay, it is several showers later, and I wanted to give a more cohesive final thoughts and review on Riverdale season 1. Now, objectively speaking, I think that this show very much lines up with the writing style and themes that were popular during TV shows in this time. I mean, looking at 13 Reasons Why, which was also very popular during this time, it's clear that audiences were moving towards darker themes, and I think the Riverdale writers did a good job at reflecting that. With that being said though, I think in the future of Riverdale, they started to lean a little too much into the dark, crazy mystery side of things, and then that's when they started to lose audiences. I mean, not to reveal too much of the future, but I'm pretty sure at one point they all gained superpowers, so that's a little different than the semi-grounded in reality murder mystery that we just watched. Something that is commonly an issue when you look at adapting something like a comic to a TV show or a video game into a movie, you run into the problem of how much of the original story and original personalities can you keep in this format. I think because Riverdale broke so far out of what it was known as by audiences, they kind of were able to get away with it. I personally don't know any upset Riverdale fans that saw the change in this cast of characters that they knew. It was actually pretty well received. And I think that's an issue that Scooby-Doo ran into versus Riverdale not running into, was when you adapt a TV show to TV show, what you run into is if you scrap certain characters, certain storylines, certain personality traits that they were given in a previous iteration, fans get upset. But since Riverdale dramatically changed the format of the Archie comics, I think that they were able to get away with it a little more and they didn't run into that issue necessarily. Overall, I think that this was a pretty decent adaptation and modern take on the Archie comics. Sure, it was a little hokey at times, but what show isn't? And I don't think it's particularly fair to criticize CW as a whole and say, well, Riverdale's bound to have bad writing because it's a CW show. I think the writing flaws tend to fall on writers being rushed to cram out these episodes, and since studios notice that audiences pay attention more when the writing isn't necessarily great or the jokes are just so, I don't even know, over the top and ridiculous and oversaturated, I think that since they see that spike in viewership, then they encourage writers to keep writing in that style, which brings in hate viewers, but in turn they keep coming back to watch the show. I don't think it's particularly fair though to criticize an entire network and say, oh, if it's on this network, it's going to have bad writing. I don't think that a certain TV show genre or movie genre should get away with, oh, it has bad writing because it's in this genre. That's not fair, I think, to the writers to be able to explore and develop those characters. For example, branching away from Riverdale for a second, we have this notorious trope where the writing for action movies is always the same and it's always this ridiculous, over-the-top, dramatic, theatrical moment.
However, we look at movies like Black Panther: Wakanda Forever that had absolutely incredible writing to the point where an actor from that movie was nominated for an Oscar, which is incredibly rare for superhero movies to even get to that point. I think by shoehorning certain genres of film and TV shows into this niche of you have to have bad writing in order to bring in viewership, awards, etc., I think that that is incredibly unfair and diminishes the fact that these writers are very capable of writing great movies or TV shows. A TV show or movie being a certain genre or on a certain network shouldn't be an excuse for bad writing. I think greatness can come from anywhere. We just need to give the proper resources for greatness to be achieved. I think because Riverdale came at this perfect storm of TV shows coming out with a darker theme, and that was what the pop culture craved, I think that it was pretty successful. Clearly, I mean, it got 7 seasons out of it, even though fans have been calling for it to be canceled since I think season 3. Riverdale unfortunately profited from hate viewership, and it's unfortunate looking at season 1 and seeing it wasn't that bad this season, and knowing then the future of Riverdale, it's unfortunate to see that. Anyway, that is all for my thoughts right now. Let's go to past Kieran for the outro. Speaking of, if you watched until the end of the video, dude, thank you so much. I know this was a long one. I know it was a journey, and I'm so glad you came along with me. I honestly had fun looking back at this TV show. It was definitely a little insane at times, but it wasn't too bad, and it kind of made me nostalgic of when I watched it. If you want to see me talk about the other seasons, let me know. If you want to see me talk about something completely different, let me know. I hope you appreciated this standing video. It's too hot in my room right now to sit down on the chair that I used to record, so this is the solution that you're getting right now. If you don't like it, just nicely let me know down below. I'm sensitive. I'll send a little smooch your way, and I'll see you next time.